Hello and welcome to my very first drawing tutorial here on Deer Fox Studios. I am the Ghost Leopard and I'm going to be talking about drawing wings for animals, dragons, and I'm even going to touch on drawing wings for humans and humanoid creatures. I'm not only going to be showing you how to draw various wings, but I'm also going to explain how different types of wings work for creature creation, or if you're just looking to draw a specific kind of bird. I'm going to start off with feathered wings. They can be basically sketched kind of like this. Feathered wings are what you see on birds, as you probably know, but what you might not know is that there are actually different kinds of feathers on the wings, each with different purposes. First off, you've got your primary feathers. These feathers are right near the tip of the bird's wing, and they are the longer feathers that help the bird control flight and are support for while the bird is in the air. These feathers are called the secondary feathers. They are shorter and located on the edge of the bird's wing right here. They also help support the bird during flight. The other feathers up here are mostly just to support the primary and secondary feathers, but also to keep the bird's wing warm during flight. The most important feathers are the primary and secondary feathers. If you don't have either of these, your bird can't fly. If you start looking at different bird species' wings, you'll start to notice that the wings are often shaped differently for different kinds of flight. It's important to realize these different kinds of flight when drawing a bird's wing, or even if you're making up a bird, dragon, or some other mythical species. Each wing may be unique to each kind of bird, but it really boils down to the categories soaring, speed, long distance, hovering, powered flight, and night gliding. Night gliding could probably be categorized in the powered flight section, but I think it's cool enough on its own for me to mention it as its own thing. A good example of soaring birds are eagles, hawks, and vultures. They are meant to soar up high in the sky searching for prey or a dead animal in the vulture's case. These wings are very wide and broad, but the most notable thing, in my opinion, are the primary feather slots. Look at them! Look at the feather slots! These gaps in the feathers allow the bird to maneuver their wings easily and catch wind currents. Soaring birds are really good at flying at high altitudes or soaring long distances without using much energy. No, this type of flight doesn't really use as much energy as some of the others, but it also isn't as fast as some of the others. If you want something speedy, you're gonna want the speedy flight wings. I'm not gonna lie, whenever I think of the speed type flight, I immediately go to the peregrine falcon. If you've ever heard of this bird while watching Diego or whatever when you were a kid, hey, I won't judge. I used to love octonauts when I was in elementary. You probably know that this is the fastest animal on the planet. However, it isn't the only bird in this group of flyers. This group also includes all the other falcon species, kites, and swifts. These birds have really sharp-looking wings that are ideal for cutting through the air quickly. They almost never have gaps in their wings. While the peregrine falcon might have a high reputation as the fastest animal on the planet, it technically only achieves this during its dive, which is impressive, but steals some of the attention from the birds who are fast in level flight, like the kites and chimney sweeps. The fastest species of bird in level flight is the spine-tailed swift. It uses its intense speed to capture insects in midair. While the speedy, gotta-go-fast birds might be, well, fast, this kind of flight can take up quite a lot of energy and quickly. Actually, flying in general just takes up a lot of energy. It's a workout, guys. Cut the birds some slack. The next thing I'm going to talk about are the long-distance flyers, like the wandering albatross, the Arctic tern, and most other seabirds. These wings are usually very long and slender, ideal for finding the air currents and just letting them boost the bird into the air. These birds, especially the wandering albatross, often have to take a running start to get into the air. Many seabirds have this kind of wing due to the fact that they have to fly miles over the water without anywhere to land. This kind of flight is, again, very low energy required, but not usually very fast or maneuverable. The hoverflight birds probably use the most energy in flight of all the birds, but they're extremely maneuverable, able to fly backwards, sideways, and even upside down. This group is pretty small, and the only birds are hummingbirds, but many insects use this kind of flight as well. Their wings are somewhat short and sharp like this. Hummingbirds fly quite differently from the other birds. Instead of the usual up and down stroking motions or gliding in the wind, hummingbirds beat their wings rapidly in all different directions at once. This keeps them hovering in the air, completely motionless other than their beating wings and flexing tail feathers. If they want to go in a certain direction, they'll just put the pressure of their wing beats a little bit in the opposite direction of where they want to go. This kind of flight is really great for hovering around flowers and such, and is really great for maneuverability. However, it again does take up a lot of energy. Powered flight is the kind of flight used by most lawn birds, such as sparrows, cardinals, robins, and blue jays. But it is also used by ducks, birds of paradise, and other species. These wings can be sharp or rounded, but usually have slots like the soaring wings. Slots! These wings are fantastic for quick takeoffs and moving around in tight spaces, but often don't do so well when it comes to long distance or altitude soaring. The last kind of feathered wing I'm going to mention is the night gliding wing. I think this one could, again, probably be categorized somewhere in the powered flight category, but I wanted to single it out because these wings have the unique ability to fly almost completely without a sound. Owls have this kind of flight and use it to sneak up on innocent mice and other creatures. This wing is usually quite broad and rounded, with little to no slots as seen here. Drawing birds and other creatures in different flight poses, and just with their wings in general, can be a tricky task sometimes. Especially with the dragons. I mean, it's an extra set of limbs and is kind of just there if the dragon's on the ground. However, breaking it down into shapes and studying birds in real life can help a lot. References are key. Even when you are drawing a dragon, griffin, or some other mythical creature, you can use examples of birds to help you get the concept of flight down. Now, while in level flight, as you know, a bird's wing will move up and down, as seen here. But it is important to think of how the air is affecting the feathers, especially when animating. Usually, the downstroke should last a little bit longer than the upstroke, and the wings should tuck in like so during the upstroke. Make sure to not have the feathers be too floppy. Flight feathers are pretty stiff in reality. During takeoff, a bird will usually either take a running start before getting into the air, or push off of whatever surface they are currently standing on, as seen here. When landing, they'll usually turn their wings sideways in an attempt to slow down, while extending their legs in preparation to land. While your bird, dragon, or whatever is on the ground, the wings might seem a little bit pointless in the moment. However, wings can be used to indicate all sorts of emotions and gestures. For one example, I've seen lots of cartoons and movies use the bird's wing as a sort of makeshift hand, with the feathers as fingers. If you want to get a little bit more realistic, you could simply have the bird or dragon use his or her wings to point at things, make simple gestures and motions, or hug a friend. Another thing wings can do is help with body language and emotion. Most birds in real life will flare up their wings and feathers like so if they're threatened or scared, to try and make themselves look bigger than they actually are. You could also show your bird or dragon character dragging their wings on the ground to show that they are exhausted or injured. You could also have them twitch their wings back to show that they are feeling shy or nervous, like indicated a lot in Wings of Fire. One thing that is often neglected when talking about birds' wings is the bird's tail feathers. These might just seem like a side note when drawing birds, but they're actually really important for flight. The tail feathers help the birds stay balanced in the air and act as a rudder to help with steering. Like the wings, the tail feathers are shaped differently for different kinds of flight, ranging from a fan shape to a diamond shape to even a scissor shape as seen here. Another kind of wing I want to talk about is known as the bat wing. This wing consists of a long arm ending in a hand with extremely long fingers. The fingers are all connected by webbing that stretches from the tip of what would be the pointer finger all the way to the bat's legs. Most dragons have this kind of wing, and in my opinion, the webbing should probably stretch all the way to the base of the tail or even further. A really good strategy for drawing bat wings is to just imagine it as a hand and arm with really long fingers, as I previously mentioned. You wouldn't draw a hand like these, would you? Bats have webbing between their legs to kind of act as a tail rudder. But what about dragons? Dragons usually have a large tail like a crocodile or a lizard. While it would probably work to just leave the tail bare of any flying mechanisms, if you really wanted your dragon to look like it's built for the air, it might be good to give your dragon some sort of webbing structure on the tail. A great example of this is Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. You can, of course, mess around with different shapes for the tail structures. Remember, the different shapes for birds' wings and tails can also apply to the bat wings. Be creative and play around with it. Don't be afraid to try different things. Just, please, don't do this. Pterosaur wings are kind of like a cross between the bird and bat wings. They are structured like the bird wings, but have webbing like the bat's wings. Because pterosaurs are extinct, we can only theorize about how they flew, but I kind of imagine them gliding along on thermal updrafts, sort of like the seabirds I talked about earlier. I don't know though, I'm no paleontologist. One more thing about bird, bat, and pterosaur wings is that the pectoral muscles on the chest and around the arm area are often enormous. They need to be strong in order to power those wings, so make sure to include them when drawing your flying creatures. Most of the insects have wings, and usually they have two pairs. They're shaped sort of like this, although it varies from insect to insect. My favorite is probably the dragonfly, who is probably one of the best flyers in the animal kingdom. Insects like ladybugs and other beetles usually keep their wings protected in a sort of sheath while they are in flight. Bees, flies, and wasps can hover like dragonflies, but aren't as fast. Also, they only have one pair of wings. Butterflies and moths have enormous, brightly colored wings. Some species, like the monarch butterfly, are known for traveling extremely long distances. The best advice I can offer you for insect wings is to always have a reference on hand, because there are so many different types of insects and their wings vary greatly. One thing I really like to do, especially when drawing the see-through wings of dragonflies and bees, is to draw a simple little texture like this. You can always get way more detailed, but for cartoons and simpler, more cutesy styles, this can work perfectly. Again, you can always play around with insect wing shapes and textures, especially with mythical creatures. Trying to realistically calculate how big your wing should be for your creature can be a bit of a big task all on its own. Scientifically, you need 1 square inch of wing for every 0.6 ounces of weight. When you have a 500-pound dragon, those wings can inevitably get pretty large. Usually, what I do for dragons instead of this is make each wing 3 times the body length, including the tail. This may or may not be overly generous, but whatever method you use is going to give you some pretty large wings. These can be a pain to handle when drawing a character, so usually people will make the wings smaller to reduce technical difficulties and make it simple for a more cartoony style. This is perfectly fine, just please don't do this. I am begging you, just don't. Now, what about wings on humanoid creatures? Angels, harpies, fairies, demons, and Vector from Despicable Me are all examples of humanoid creatures with wings. Usually, you see people place the wings near the human's back. If you do this, be careful not to place them directly on top of the arm. If the wing and arm bone are connected, they won't be able to move separately, which will cause multiple complications. This applies to dragons and other six-limbed creatures like this as well. Like all the other vertebrate flying creatures I've mentioned, humans would probably need some sort of tail to help balance them and steer while flying. You could add a tail, or you could add webbing between the legs, although that might complicate things when walking or running. You could also add feathers to the legs sticking out like this. The possibilities are endless. One more thing on humans is that, like the flying creatures, humans would need enormous pectoral muscles. I wouldn't normally encourage you to ignore scientific rules, but this is an exception. I don't think I'm the only one who thinks this looks ridiculous. I mean, you could do this, but it might just be better to deplete the amount of muscle here. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is what to do with creatures' limbs while they're in flight. I think it's most important to always have in mind how the wind and direction your creature is flying may affect the limbs. They may also just tuck their limbs back like most bird species do. With dragons, the tail can be really fun to work with in this situation, because it can easily show you from what direction your dragon just flew in. Wings can be fantastically fun things to draw. Whether you're drawing birds, dragons, fairies, pterodactyls, vector, or anything else you could possibly imagine that flies, wings are going to be an extremely important aspect to these creatures. Remember to keep practicing and be proud of your work always. Don't worry about what other people think, as long as you love it and God loves it. You're a fantastic artist. Even if you don't like it, you can always practice and keep getting better. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Deer Fox, and if you want to see more drawing tutorials like this, be sure to leave a comment. I will be taking requests. Have a blessed day. This is the Ghost Leopard signing off.